Yo, what's up everybody? We need to talk about something brewing under the surface, a harsh reality for millions: Islamophobia. We're talking about systemic discrimination, hate speech becoming policy, and violence that's all too common. We're diving into 10 countries where being Muslim feels like walking on eggshells. Fear, fueled by misinformation and prejudice, has taken root. Get ready to be uncomfortable. We're not shying away. We'll break down how this prejudice manifests and what we can do. Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Islamophobia and anti-Muslim sentiment are increasingly prevalent, affecting Muslim communities worldwide. First up, we land in India, the land of Bollywood, chai, and a rising tide of Hindu nationalism. India has always been a melting pot of cultures and religions, but recently, things have taken a turn. The government is accused of pushing a Hindu-first agenda, sidelining its Muslim citizens. Remember the Citizenship Amendment Act? It fast-tracked citizenship for refugees, excluding Muslims. Controversial laws like anti-conversion laws are said to target Muslims. And then there's the violence, mob lynchings, attacks on mosques, and fear in Muslim communities. India's a vibrant democracy, but open hostility towards a community is a problem. It's time for India to remember its values of tolerance and inclusivity. This isn't about politics, it's about basic human rights. India needs to get its act together, and fast. Next, we touch down in the good old US of A, the self-proclaimed champion of freedom and democracy. But let's be real, America, you've got some serious soul-searching to do. From the Muslim ban to rampant Islamophobia, it's clear that prejudice against Muslims is alive and well. Remember those travel bans targeting Muslim-majority countries? Those weren't exactly sending a message of welcome. And then there's the constant barrage of negative stereotypes in the media. Muslims are either terrorists or victims, never just regular people living their lives. And let's not forget the hate crimes. Mosque vandalizations, harassment, and even deadly attacks. It's like some people think that being Muslim is a threat to the American way of life. Newsflash, it's not. America, you built yourself on the promise of religious freedom. It's time to start living up to that promise for all your citizens, regardless of their faith. You can't claim to be the land of the free while simultaneously demonizing an entire community. Get it together, America. Our journey takes us now to China, a global superpower with a dark secret. We're talking about the systematic oppression of Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang region. This isn't just discrimination, it's what many are calling cultural genocide. Imagine being ripped away from your family and thrown into a detention camp just because of your faith. That's the reality for an estimated 1 million Uyghurs in China. They're subjected to forced labor, political indoctrination, and unspeakable abuses. China claims these camps are vocational training centers aimed at combating extremism. But let's call it what it is, an attempt to erase Uyghur culture and identity. From banning their language to destroying their mosques, the Chinese government is waging a war on their own people. The world is watching, China. You can't hide behind economic progress while committing atrocities against an entire population. It's time to end the Uyghur Crisis, release the detainees, and allow independent observers into Xinjiang. Chapter 4, Myanmar, the Rohingya Genocide. Our next stop is Myanmar, where we confront the horrific reality of the Rohingya Muslim genocide. This is a story of ethnic cleansing, mass displacement, and unimaginable cruelty. Imagine being driven from your home, your villages burned to the ground, your families torn apart. That's what happened to the Rohingya people at the hands of the Myanmar military. They were stripped of their citizenship, denied basic rights, and subjected to a campaign of violence that shocked the world. The images of Rohingya refugees fleeing across the border to Bangladesh were heartbreaking. Women, children, the elderly, all desperate for safety and a future free from persecution. The world condemned the violence, but justice remains elusive. The perpetrators of these crimes must be held accountable, and the Rohingya people deserve a safe and dignified return to their homeland. Chapter 5, Israel, a land of unequal laws. We arrive now in Israel, a land steeped in history and conflict. But amidst the complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, one thing is clear. The discrimination faced by Palestinians, particularly Muslims, is undeniable. We're talking about a system that often feels like two sets of laws, one for Israelis and another for Palestinians living under occupation. From restrictions on movement to discriminatory housing policies, Palestinians face daily obstacles that most Israelis can't even imagine. And then there's the issue of Jerusalem, a city holy to both Jews and Muslims. The increasing Jewish settlements in East Jerusalem, considered occupied territory by the international community, further fuels tensions and exacerbates the sense of injustice felt by Palestinians. Peace in the region requires a just and equitable solution for both Israelis and Palestinians. That means dismantling the occupation, ensuring equal rights for all, and finding a way to share Jerusalem in a way that respects the claims of both sides. Chapter 6. France Secularism or Islamophobia. Next we land in France, the land of liberté, égalité, fraternité, but lately that fraternity seems to be fading, especially when it comes to Muslims. France has this whole secularism thing, which is supposed to separate church and state, but somewhere along the way it's morphed into something that feels a lot like Islamophobia. We're talking about bans on headscarves in schools and public places, laws that disproportionately target Muslim women and their right to express their faith. It's like France is saying, sure, you can practice your religion, but only if we can't see it. And then there's the rhetoric. Politicians and media personalities making sweeping generalizations about Muslims, linking them to extremism and terrorism. It's creating a climate of fear and suspicion that's deeply concerning. France, you pride yourself on being a beacon of liberty and equality. It's time to start living up to those ideals for all your citizens, regardless of their faith. True secularism means respecting everyone's right to practice their religion freely, without fear or discrimination. Chapter 7. Australia, Offshore Detention and Islamophobic Rhetoric. G'day mates! We're in Australia, the land of sunshine, surfing and well, some pretty harsh policies towards asylum seekers and Muslims. Remember those offshore detention centers? Yeah, the ones where refugees, many fleeing persecution in their home countries, are held indefinitely in deplorable conditions. Australia's treatment of asylum seekers has been widely condemned by human rights groups. It's a system that seems designed to punish and deter, rather than offer refuge and protection. And then there's the rise of Islamophobic rhetoric in Australian politics and media. Muslims are often portrayed as a threat to Australian values, fueling prejudice and discrimination. Australia, you're a nation built on immigration. It's time to reclaim your humanitarian spirit and treat all those who seek refuge on your shores with compassion and respect. Next we find ourselves in Russia, a vast country with a complicated history when it comes to Islam. From the brutal conflicts in Chechnya to the everyday discrimination faced by Muslims across the country, it's clear that prejudice runs deep. The Kremlin has long been wary of Islamic extremism, and its policies often reflect that fear. We're talking about surveillance of mosques, restrictions on Islamic teachings, and a general atmosphere of suspicion towards Muslims. While Russia officially recognizes Islam as one of its traditional religions, the reality for many Muslims on the ground is far from equal. They face discrimination in employment, housing, and education, and often feel like they're treated as second-class citizens. Russia, it's time to move beyond the fear and suspicion and embrace the diversity of your own population. True strength lies in unity, not in suppressing the rights of a particular group. We arrive now in Germany, a country that has worked hard to confront its past and embrace tolerance. But even here, the rise of the far-right and anti-Muslim sentiment is a worrying trend. The Alternative for Germany, AfD party, with its openly anti-Muslim rhetoric, has gained traction in recent years, exploiting fears about immigration and Islam to fuel its agenda. From hate speech to attacks on mosques, Germany is witnessing a surge in Islamophobia that threatens its hard-won progress towards a more inclusive society. Germany, you know better than most the dangers of unchecked hatred and intolerance. It's time to stand up to the forces of division and reaffirm your commitment to the values of equality and respect for all. Our final stop takes us to Sweden, a country often seen as a model of social welfare and tolerance. But even here, tensions are simmering beneath the surface, particularly when it comes to the integration of Muslim immigrants. Sweden has seen a rise in anti-Muslim sentiment in recent years, fueled by concerns about crime, segregation, and the erosion of Swedish identity. This has led to increased support for far-right parties and a hardening of attitudes towards Muslims. While Sweden prides itself on its openness and tolerance, the reality for many Muslims is one of exclusion and discrimination. They face barriers in employment, housing, and social integration, often feeling like they're not truly welcome. Sweden, it's time to have an honest conversation about integration and identity. Building a truly inclusive society requires addressing the fears and concerns of all citizens, while also challenging prejudice and discrimination wherever it exists. So, there you have it. A glimpse into the realities of Islamophobia in 10 countries around the world. From India to Sweden, the United States to China, We've seen how prejudice and discrimination manifest in different ways, impacting the lives of millions. But this isn't just a story about hate, it's a call to action. We can't stand by while entire communities are marginalized, demonized, and attacked. We need to challenge Islamophobia wherever we see it, in our schools, workplaces, and communities. Support organizations fighting for justice and equality, educate yourself and others about Islam, and most importantly, speak out against bigotry and intolerance. Together, we can create a world where everyone, regardless of their faith or background, feels safe, respected, and valued. These countries must address their challenging environments for Muslims through strengthening anti-discrimination laws, promoting interfaith dialogue, encouraging inclusive media representation, supporting Muslim communities' social and economic integration, and combating hate crimes and rhetoric. Encourage viewers to support organizations working to combat Islamophobia and promote understanding.